Welcome to Beyond CX, our bite-sized peek into customer experience and related technology, brought to you by Boxfusion. I'm your host, Andy Stevens, and today, to help me look into the explosion in the world of CX over the recent years in the use of chatbots, I have with me Jake Patterson, Principal Consultant and our Conversational AI Lead at Boxfusion. Welcome, Jake.
Thanks, Andy. Great to be here.
So to start with, why are some chatbots just so bad?
Yeah, well, I think we've all probably experienced it on a website. We ask a simple question and we don't get a very good response, and it puts us off chatbots seemingly for life. But I think the number one reason that I tend to see is not really understanding the user's needs. So building a chatbot, going straight in, focusing on the technology, and not really thinking about what it is your users are actually going to be asking it and what they want to get out of it. That's the first thing you've got to focus on. You've got to get that right. Nothing else matters if you don't get that right.
Perfect. So I think that's a good lesson generally in CX, is to think of your user first, and the technology supports that later.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving on from there, I'm kind of interested because we know that customer experience can relate to external customers, but also internal customers. We think of employees as internal customers when it comes to CX. So when you're and messaging and chatbots are equally relevant in both spaces. So when you're thinking about designing a chatbot experience for an internal customer versus an external one, what are some of the differences and considerations?
I think the main initial kind of consideration, or the main difference, is that for an internal chatbot, your users are already kind of well known to you because they're your employees. They're already logged in, generally anyway, and they're already in an environment where you can get all of the information you need to about them. So you can already pull back their employee record to help answer any questions that you need to. So that gives you a lot more flexibility to help them practically, because you can take the answers to any questions, things like HR policies and so on, and you can combine that with that person's actual data about their employee record. So it gives you a lot more scope to work within that environment, knowing exactly who you're dealing with.
Okay, I guess that could again lead to a much better user experience if the user feels like they're not having to tell the chatbot something that they expect the chatbot to already know about.
Yeah, exactly. It does provide a much better user experience, being able to just go away and get that. And we can do that for customer facing chatbots as well. But obviously we then might need to ask them some more questions. We might need to identify them. We might need to ask them for their email address and their name and their date of birth and security questions and things like that. Whereas we have a lot more flexibility with employee facing chatbots. There is another consideration as well. So, for example, when we work within the realm of employee-facing chatbots, we might be able to limit the scope for an initial release and sort of expand out the capabilities in phases, because with it being an internal environment, we can guide our employees to use it only for certain things. So, for example, we might say, this is your new IT chatbot, and then in future we might expand it out to HR questions as well. And so we can control the scope a lot more easily, whereas with customer-facing chatbots, we just don't know what the customer's going to ask. They could ask absolutely anything. We can't really control that. So we really need to be able to fully understand the whole spectrum of appropriate customer questions right from day one, which is a lot more challenging.
Yeah, okay, makes sense. Now, I talked at the top, there's obviously, this topic is a very, very hot topic in society more generally, and this doesn't happen too often, where what you're doing, or what we do at work with technology, it becomes a topic that everybody's talking about in the pub. But I actually remember being in the office the day that you first played with ChatGPT at the end of 2022. So that generative AI hype, is it pure hype, or is it going to change the world? Or is it just going to die out and we won't be talking about it again in 12 months? Where do you sit on that spectrum?
Yeah, I think it definitely has its practical, real world uses, and it has great ways to add real value, especially for for businesses. But I think the main problem that we have at the moment is that it is hyped. There is a lot of misunderstanding around what it can really do. So, for example, LLMs and generative AI, it's linguistic based. So it can answer your questions, it can summarize things for you, it can consume lots of information and make it really accessible to you. But for example, what it can't do is go off and perform complex numerical mathematical analyses for you. So a lot of the time we have a situation where people expect to be able to just bring in this generative AI system and it will do all of these things for them. And in reality, what you need to do is you need to think about what its capabilities are, what your requirements are, and how it can fit as part of a wider solution. So you can absolutely have it help you understand complex data, but you need to integrate it with a different system to go away and pull out that data, perform those calculations and that analysis, and then feed that into your AI system to present it to your users in an accessible way. So generative AI in and of itself isn't a silver bullet. It's not going to solve every problem, but it can form a good part of those kind of solutions, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I feel like over the years, pretty much any new technology comes along, if you don't understand its capabilities and you also don't have a view as to what problem you're trying to solve, you can end up mismatching and trying to make it solve something that it's not very good at solving.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably the main risk at the moment is everybody's rushing to have AI and especially generative AI. But I think you've got to make sure the use case is there. You've got to make sure that there's a real way that it will add value for your users.
Perfect. Yeah. So that brings me on to probably the last topic I wanted to get your thoughts on today. In the world of customer experience and the sorts of business problems that you come across when working with customers, what do you think some of the biggest opportunities are for generative AI to help solve problems for businesses or make things more efficient?
I definitely think the main area is in consuming all of that knowledge that companies have, all of that information that they have in a very kind of unstructured way. It might be in SharePoint or in their knowledge bases, all of these different places, and being able to read that, to consume it, to understand it, and to bring back that information in a really useful way for employees or for customers. The value is in being able to make all of that information accessible, to be able to ask questions of it, to be able to kind of summarize it. And that can take a lot of different forms. So it could be for customer facing, it could be a chatbot answering questions directly based on knowledge-based content. Or for your contact center agents, it could be summarizing previous interactions that customers have had, previous challenges that they've contacted you about, and giving agents that background to the customer. So there's lots of different ways that it can provide really good value, and most of it comes from being able to take all of that data from all of the places you already have and making sense of it.
Okay, and any other sort of areas or themes that you've noticed or picked up that you think that could be emerging as areas that Gen AI will help businesses?
Yeah, I think in terms of things like translation. So again, you have all of this content, you have all of this knowledge. You can make that accessible to your customers or to your users in lots of different languages. You can use the generative AI services to translate content that you already have. And so that means that you open up these services to a much wider group of people than you would otherwise be able to support, I think.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for joining me today, Jake.
Thanks very much.
And thanks very much for tuning in to this episode of Beyond CX. And I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.